This is a special report.
Dr. Buttar, Shiva, and Mikovits are now calling to arrest Dr. Anthony Fauci as the crisis continues to crush President Trump's economy. Now, at the end of this special report, you will be asked to cast your vote on the fate of Dr. Anthony Fauci, like they did in the days of the Roman Colosseum, with a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Now, a thumbs up means arrest Dr. Fauci. A thumbs down means he walks free. So please reserve your vote until the end of this special report, and you've heard from every doctor. Yes, the calls to arrest Dr. Fauci have amplified across Americans. Millions are out of work, and the economy continues to freefall. Many are pointing the finger at Dr. Fauci and Microsoft founder Bill Gates as the sole cause due to their wildly inaccurate and repeatedly revised pandemic predictions. Now, I had the unique opportunity over the past month to interview several top doctors in their fields who all have come to one conclusion: that Dr. Fauci should be arrested. Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, he holds 4 degrees from MIT, a doctor. He's also the inventor of email at the age of 14 and a PhD in biological engineering, who studies the immune system daily. Dr. Rashid Buttar graduated from Washington University with a double major in biology and theology before attending medical school at the University of Osteopathic Medicine and Health Sciences College of Medicine and Surgery. And Dr. Mikovits. She's a cellular and molecular biologist with over 30 years of scientific experience. Dr. Judy Mikovits, she has directed programs on HIV, cancer, epigenetics, and neuroimmune disease with a focus on development of novel drug and diagnostic technologies. All 3 doctors, they may not agree with each other, but there is one thing they can agree on. They all want to see Dr. Fauci behind bars. Now, in this video, I will present their case to the American public, where you will be the judge of the ultimate question: should Dr. Fauci be indicted for the crimes alleged by these doctors? That is what you must make the call on. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Now, on April 16th, Dr. Buttar joined me to discuss the current state of the pandemic, and we covered a variety of topics. Some of those topics were deemed too controversial, and YouTube decided to remove the original interview as it approached 7 million views. On April 29th, 2020, BuzzFeed contacted me for clarification on a video I produced on the 19th that included excerpts from that interview, which, according to a spokesperson from YouTube speaking to BuzzFeed, the BuzzFeed reporter, those excerpts did not violate the social media company's policies. Now, in the opening of the interview, Dr. Buttar discusses how he believes Dr. Fauci got around the 2015 moratorium on CV testing by transferring 3.7 million U.S. taxpayer dollars to the Wuhan lab to continue that very testing. Take a look. I think you're talking about is the moratorium that was placed, and then $3.7 million from the National Institute of Health was transferred to China so they could continue this research, even though the moratorium. So they basically outsourced this research to China. Is this the same topic we're talking about here? This news is just breaking?
Yes, this is exactly right. So it goes back to 2014. The U.S. government decided, based upon certain virologists at that time, saying that, look, there's no justification for this kind of research. There's a potential for it to cause harm, cause a pandemic. So there's no justification for us to do this type of research. So the government passed a moratorium in 2014. Fauci approved budgets to be monies to be sectioned for this type of research. So basically, and I'm getting really, every time I think about this, it gets me really flustered because I'm so angry that he basically broke the law. He more than broke the law. He created this entire cascade that we're seeing with the world shutdown was created by this initial aspect back in 2015. He broke the law. He went against government moratoriums. He's took taxpayer money and he funded research that has now led to the COVID-19. In 2017, he was documented at Georgetown University saying that there will be a pandemic that this presidency will face, that this term will face. How did he know that in 2017 that something was going to happen in 2018, 19, or 2020? You can't predict the market from 3 days from today, what's going to happen. How did he know that there was going to be a pandemic? He stated the president of this president will face a pandemic. The exact quotes, I don't want to say the exact words. You guys have the video footage. My point is that
there is no question that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that. But also there will be a surprise outbreak. There will be a surprise outbreak. There will be a surprise outbreak.
When somebody starts making these type of statements, and then they were involved with the breaking of the law to fund the research that American taxpayers paid for, that then goes to Wuhan and now trying to create this diversion and say that it was China.
Now, shortly after my interview with Dr. Buttar, it went viral. President Trump's personal attorney and the former mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, appeared on a New York morning radio show and called for an investigation of that very grant. Take a look.
There's some very strange things that have to be looked at very carefully. You're absolutely right. China predicted this could happen. China also, for the last 10, 12 years, has been carrying on these experiments, including in this Wuhan laboratory, with animals, and actually making the virus more dangerous, seeing how dangerous the virus can become. Now, you could say that's for scientific purposes, or you could say it's for the purpose of weaponizing it. So back in 2014, the Obama administration prohibited the U.S. from giving any money to any laboratory, including in the U.S., that was fooling around with these viruses. Prohibited it. Despite that, Dr. Fauci gave $3.7 million to the Wuhan laboratory. And then even after the State Department issued reports about how unsafe that laboratory was and how suspicious they were of the way in which they were developing a virus that could be transmitted to humans, we never pulled that money. So something here is going on, John. I don't want to make any accusations, but there was more knowledge about what was going on in China with our scientific people than they disclosed to us when this first came out. I mean, just think of it. If this laboratory turns out to be the place where the virus came from, we paid for it. We paid for the damn virus that's killing us.
Now, probably the most significant moment once news broke of the $3.7 million grant to the Wuhan lab was when Newsmax reporter Emerald Robinson directly asked the president about that grant. Watch.
Thank you, Mr. President. U.S. intelligence is saying this week that the coronavirus likely came from a level 4 lab in Wuhan. There's also another report that the NIH, under the Obama administration in 2015, gave that lab $3.7 million in a grant. Why would the U.S. give a grant like that to China?
The Obama administration gave them a grant of $3.7 million. I've been hearing about that. And we've instructed that if any grants are going to that area, we're looking at it literally about an hour ago, and also early in the morning. We will end that grant very quickly, but it was granted quite a while ago. They were granted a substantial amount of money. We're going to look at it and take a look, but I understand it was a number of years ago, right?
So you are.
When did you hear was the grant was made?
2015.
2015. Who was president then?
Yeah, who was president then? Now, all things considered, these are important questions that should be asked and not be silenced. Now, later in my interview, I directly asked Dr. Buttar if Dr. Fauci is responsible for the pandemic because of that research grant. Here's his response.
Is Fauci directly responsible for this pandemic because he maneuvered the money, he maneuvered around the moratorium, kept this chimeric research going in China? Is he directly responsible for not just the pandemic, but also the response that's killed the economy, put, 17 to 22 million people out of work? Is Fauci directly responsible?
I'm going to say this. I think that I've seen some petitions going around. I know Dr. Shiva said that Fauci should be fired. I think that's the nicest thing that could be done to Fauci. I think he's a criminal. He's broken the law. He's gone against the government. I mean, to me, that seems like it's a traitorous thing to do when the government has passed a regulation and he's at one of the highest levels in the NIH. He's got a directorship at the NIH, and then he breaks the law, he breaks the moratorium, and then funds research against something that could potentially cause harm throughout the entire world. And he's in collusion with the foreign government.
Collusion with the foreign government. There you have Dr. Buttar's take. Now, before we look back at the historical record of the alleged misdeeds that led to Dr. Fauci's rise to the top of the United States medical industrial complex, let's take a look now at a clip from my April 9th interview with Dr. Shiva, where he called for the indictment of Dr. Fauci. Take a look.
Let's talk about Fauci. You know, since we spoke, we ran a campaign to fire Fauci. And I frankly believe this individual should be indicted and should be fired, and all sorts of charges should be leveled at him, because he's essentially been the mastermind of an organization for many, many years across many, many presidents, which has promoted a fake science that the immune system is so weak and that you always characterize some virus as a cause of destruction to the immune system. He did this with HIV and AIDS. And so this is his, probably second or third rodeo. And the goal here is to scare everyone with a fake science understanding that as though the immune system gets attacked by the virus, right? So one of the things we did was we called for his firing and his indictment, and I think close to 40,000 people in a few days signed that petition. I would say we probably have close to 2,000 doctors now, Gary, across the world, because the doctors themselves are recognizing that they are victims of a big pharma medical education system. Now, if you look at a guy like Fauci, I believe he's on the leadership council of the Gates Foundation. He loves the Clintons, and his relationship through the NIH and the CDC and the WHO is this triangle, which, by the way, the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese CDC is part of. The NIH of the United States funded, even as early as 2 or 3 years ago, $14 million to the Chinese CDC. So the entire cabal here is not about health. It's not about understanding how we boost people's immune systems. So in this entire discourse, that is not what Fauci's been talking about. That's not what the FDA's been talking about. That's not what the WHO's been talking about. That's not what the CDC's been talking about. In fact, you have the Gates, you have Zuckerberg, and you have the Clinton Global Initiative, who are all about vaccines, vaccines, vaccines. So their entire opportunity is, we talked about early, and the trajectory of which I characterized early on is the entire purpose of this is to scare the Jesus out of everyone. So then when next year comes, or even September, October of this year, when the flu season comes, people basically blindly say, yeah, chip me up. Yes, I'll accept the vaccine card. Yes, I'll have to get vaccinated before I get my driver's license. I'm willing to, show my little vaccine card before I go to the gym. Total control.
Dr. Shiva clearly knows the end game here. Total control. And the one way you can have total control is by creating total fear, total panic. But as Amelia Earhart says, fear is like a paper tiger. And like the Wizard of Oz, once you peek behind the curtain, you reveal a weak little man. So let us peek behind the curtain, shall we? Dr. Judy Mikovits, she worked directly with Dr. Fauci during the HIV pandemic, and she draws terrifying parallels between then and now. I interviewed her on April 28th, where she declared that Dr. Fauci's rise to the top of the medical industrial complex left millions of dead bodies in his wake, and it would make Joseph Mengele blush. Take a look.
I joined the Biological Response Modifiers program under the leadership of Dr. Frank Rossetti's lab. We confirmed the isolation of HIV from saliva and blood that Dr. Luc Montagnier, Nobel laureate Luc Montagnier, had done earlier that year. Our paper was in press. At the time was confidential in press. Dr. Fauci called the laboratory. I'm 25-year-old lab technician. He called the laboratory. I answered the phone, explained that Dr. Rossetti was out of town and would address his concerns when he got back. Dr. Fauci demanded a copy of the paper, which was confidential. That's unethical. I refused to give it to him. He threatened to fire me for insubordination. I didn't budge. He bullied Dr. Rossetti when he came back to town to give him the paper, which his crony Dr. Gallo then copied. He delayed the publications of the confirmation, resulting in the delay of the diagnostics tests and the delay of the immune therapies that could have been used right then to stop the spread of HIV/AIDS. That continued. That resulted in millions of deaths.
So you heard her. She believes Dr. Fauci is responsible for millions of deaths. Now, at the end of the interview, I asked her directly, should Dr. Fauci be indicted? Watch. Should Dr. Fauci be indicted?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, she said. Now, you've heard from each of these doctors. Now, what say you? Should he be indicted?
Ό,τι και να μου κάνουν επιμένω, της γενιάς μου δεν πέρασε το τρένο. Κι ας ουρλιάζουν φαντάσματα και λύκοι, θα τους πάρω αυτό που μου ανήκει. Να θυμάσαι πως είμαι στους απ' έξω, το παιχνίδι μου μόνος θα το παίξω. Συνεργός δεν θα γίνω στην απάτη, κι ας με λένε τρελό και παραβάτη.